It's that time of the week again. It's our best and worst matchups for week 4 of the fantasy football season. As always, like and subscribe to the channel. This is our weekly video where we look at players that have good matchups and have bad matchups. And honestly, we're doing really well in this segment. We're hitting at a 60% hit rate, which is really, really good considering I'm not telling you the obvious good matchups. Bijan Robinson, if he has a good matchup, I'm not telling you to start him because that doesn't help you. Or, Mac Hollins has a bad matchup. I'm telling you to sit him. That doesn't help you either because no one's starting Mac Hollins. These are more the fringe players, the players that you're debating. Do I sit them? Do I start them? Hopefully this can be a tiebreaker for you. Again, we're hitting at a 60% rate overall. And for bad matchups, we're killing it. We're hitting at over 70%. I believe 71% of our bad matchups end up having bad games. We're about 50-50 with the good matchups have good games. And about 70% for the bad matchups actually have bad games. So those ones are killing it. Let's get started this week, starting with the quarterbacks and good matchups. First up, we have Mr. Jaden Daniels, which this is a little bit cheating because he's ranked as QB5 consensus ranking. Everyone's going to be starting Jaden Daniels considering what they saw from him last week. But if you need any reassurance, I love his matchup. And again, I base the quarterback matchups off the offensive pass blocking versus the defensive line they're going against and their pass rushing. So pass blocking versus pass rushing is what I'm comparing this. I love the Washington Commanders offensive line going up against the Arizona Cardinals pass rush. I think there's a big advantage to the Washington Commanders, and that's only going to help Jaden Daniels hopefully continue lighten it up. Caleb Williams, I think, has a good matchup here. I like, again, this is the matchup of the pass blocking versus pass rush of their opponent. He's going up against the Rams. Rams have only converted 8% of the sacks that they've, compared to their pressure rate. They do have a pretty high pressure rate at 35%. So if Caleb Williams can manage that, he will be okay because they're really bad at least the first few weeks, the Rams are, at converting those pressures into sacks, only 8% of them. Whereas the Chicago Bears offensive line is giving up 22% sack conversion rate, a 27% pressure rate though, which is pretty good for an offensive line. It's kind of middle of the league. So I like Caleb Williams here and his potential matchup going up against the Los Angeles Rams. And then Andy Dalton, man, the Red Rifle is back. Was QB8 last week, and I like this matchup against the Bengals. We just saw what Jaden Daniels did to them, kind of lit them up. I don't think the Bengals defense is very good. Now, they do have a couple good players on the team, but I really like Carolina going up against the Bengals and what that means for that offensive line and being able to give Andy Dalton protection. And I think if they can give him protection, he can kind of carve him up a bit. Am I saying they're going to win the game? No, but would I be surprised if Andy Dalton threw for 250 and 2 again? No, I wouldn't at all. So I like this. Carolina has been pretty good at protecting their quarterbacks, Bryce Young and Andy Dalton. Only a 25% pressure rate for Carolina, which is definitely bottom third, in terms of, that's top third of the league. So I like that matchup. Andy Dalton going up against his old team, revenge game, the Cincinnati Bengals. Some bad matchups for quarterbacks. Geno Smith here. Don't love this matchup for Geno Smith. Geno Smith going up against the Lions. Not a great one. It's probably the one I least like. Actually, it's probably the one I least like the most. Lions can get after the quarterback. They have an 18% sack conversion rate, which is a crazy number, a 35% pressure rate for the Lions. And the Seahawks have been giving up pressure for sure. So doesn't bode well for Geno. Now, could he have a good game? Yes. But I do think there's a chance, and there's you run the simulation 100 times, there's a decent percent chance that the Lions pass rush just kind of takes over the game and Geno has a bad game. So if you're thinking about starting Geno, which he's QB14 consensus, which means a lot of people out there are, if you have a decent pivot option with a good matchup, then I might go that way. Trevor Lawrence, I don't think anyone's really starting Trevor Lawrence. He's been really, really bad, but in case you were even close to thinking about it, I would avoid it. He has another bad matchup. He's had a lot of bad matchups, really. Cleveland, Bills, and the Texans, going up against the Texans here. So, Texans pressure rate is at 38%, which is second highest in the entire NFL. So I don't love that for Trevor Lawrence, and he's just not playing well. So I would just avoid Trevor Lawrence completely, and he's kind of 1 week away from potentially being cut in one quarterback leagues. And then Dak Prescott. I don't love this matchup for Dak Prescott going up against the Giants on Thursday night. That may seem kind of crazy for people because Dak, the Cowboys have kind of destroyed the Giants in recent years. I think this game's going to be a lot closer. I think it potentially could be low scoring. It's a Thursday night game. It's in New York. Giants have a pressure rate of 33%, which is, in the top 10 highest of the NFL, I believe, maybe top 12. And whereas the Cowboys are giving up a pressure on 26% of Dak's dropbacks and allowing 27% of those to turn into sacks. I don't know if it bodes well for Dak and the Cowboys in general. So I could see Dak not having a great game. Now, he's consensus QB8. You might not have a better option, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking at kind of a stinker game from Dak and just, Thursday night. I don't think it's the greatest matchup. And I think the Giants really, really want to win this game. So obviously they do, but I think it's even added a little bit more because they've been destroyed by the Cowboys lately. Into the running backs, our good matchup here. Najee Harris, consensus ranking RB19. He's kind of been a low-end RB2 at best to start the year. And again, for running backs, what I'm looking at is who has good matchups of run blocking offensive line versus poor run defensive lines. I think Najee Harris going up against the Colts, who I know they kind of shut down the Bears rushing offense, but going into week 3, they were like the best matchup to target for running backs. I like this for Najee Harris. Jaylen Warren, I think, is not going to play. So we could actually be seeing, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a top 15 week for Najee this week, just from pure volume. I think he could get 20 plus carries. He could go over 100 yards because I do think the Colts aren't great, and hopefully he falls into the end zone. So I think Najee Harris, I'm going to try and fit him in my lineup if possible this week. Brian Robinson, this one's a little bit of a cheating as well because Brian Robinson's like a must start at this point. The guy is, he's killing it, right? Like I told you guys, I think last week, I was never a big Brian Robinson fan. Obviously, I'm wrong about that. Brian Robinson's RB 15 on the year. He hasn't had below double-digit points yet in half PPR. He had a good game last week. I just think he didn't find the end zone. No, he found the end zone. That's right. He had the touchdown that kind of saved him, but I like Brian Robinson's matchup going up against the Cardinals again. I don't think the Cardinals defense is very good. And I think Washington's going to be able to score. And I think Arizona's going to be able to score on Washington. So you're going to see a little bit of a shootout from poor defenses, essentially, as a result, at least. So I like Brian Robinson this week. Think he could be another, top 15 to top 20 running back. Ramondre Stevenson, people are not going to want to put him in their lineup because of last week. But let's not forget, Ramondre Stevenson, heading into last week, was coming off of back-to-back. He had 20 points and 16 points. He was like a top 5 running back at that point, and then just absolutely just lost people their leagues. Going up against the Jets, we saw what happens when the Patriots are in a poor game script, a negative game script. But Ramondre Stevenson is going up against San Francisco. Now, I know from what we think of here is there's no way, San Francisco's a good matchup. And I kind of agree, but the Patriots have been really, really good at run blocking. Really good this year to start the year. They allow 1.56 yards before contact. That means Ramondre Stevenson or whoever's running the ball for the Patriots is not getting touched until he has a yard and a half. And you just think about the optics. All right, you get a yard and a half, you get touched, usually at least fall forward for a couple more, right? So that means you're probably getting 3-4 yards a clip, considering how the run defense of the offensive line of the Patriots has been blocking. That being said, San Francisco does have one of the lowest, actually the lowest yards before contact. So I don't feel necessarily great about this this matchup here. But we did just see, Kyron Williams for the Rams had 24 carries, 89 yards, 2 touchdowns, a couple catches. Aaron Jones before that, had 32 yards on the ground, but he had 5 catches. I think Ramondre Stevenson could have a type of game where he gets 15 carries, he gets 4 or 5 catches. If they keep the game close, he could have a solid game. And I don't necessarily think this is automatically a blowout, 49ers versus Patriots. I think Patriots defense every now and then can come to play, right? I think they can keep a game close where they can allow Ramondre to get 15 to 20 touches. I don't mind flexing Ramondre this week. It's a little bit scary, but I don't think, I think there's again, you run the simulation. I think there's a chance that Ramondre has a pretty good game for a good portion of those. Bad matchups here. Assuming Joe Mixon's out, Cam Akers, don't love this matchup for the Texans against the Jags and Cam Akers. This is a little bit more about the Texans than it is Jacksonville. Texans just haven't been good at run blocking right now. Jacksonville is actually pretty solid against the run. Not great, but they're okay. Don't love this for Cam Akers. I'm going to try and bench him if possible. I think the way Houston beats Jacksonville is through the air. So if you can sit Akers, please do. Jerome Ford is another one here. This is another maybe potential head scratcher for some people. But I don't love Cleveland's matchup against the Raiders. And this is, again, more about Cleveland than it is the Raiders. I know Chuba Hubbard just went off. He absolutely just destroyed 21 carries for 114 yards. But it's more about Cleveland and their inability to kind of get anything going on the ground. Jerome Ford last week, 10 carries, 37 yards. Dante Foreman hasn't been that great. He's gotten some volume, but he's under 3 yards a carry. Their offensive line's beat up. They can't protect. It's just a lot of things with Cleveland. Now, I do say Vegas's matchup, the Vegas matchup, the Raiders matchup isn't terrible, but I'm just worried about Cleveland and their ability to run block for Jerome Ford. That's more what I'm worried about. And then the last one here is J.K. Dobbins. I am benching J.K. Dobbins. The other ones, it's like, all right, you want to start Ford? I'm not going to argue with you. J.K. Dobbins, if you want to start him, I'm going to argue with you. I don't think you should be starting J.K. Dobbins at all. He's going up against Kansas City. Kansas City has absolutely shut out running backs for the last 4 or 5 weeks, going back to last year. You go back to last year, the Chiefs shut down McCaffrey in the Super Bowl. Or they did well against McCaffrey in the Super Bowl. They shut down Derrick Henry week 1. They shut down Zach Moss in week 2. They shut down shut down Bijan Robinson in week 3. They've been really good against really good running backs. The Bijan averaged 1.9 yards per carry against the Chiefs. I am benching J.K. Dobbins. Justin Herbert could miss the game. Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt, their 2 starting offensive tackles, could miss the game. Please bench J.K. Dobbins. This could be a blowout. Avoid it. Keenan Allen, if he plays, we're not sure if he's going to play. You see his consensus ranking there. It's wide receiver 98. But if he plays, I love the matchup going up against Quinton Lake here. For the Los Angeles Rams, I think they could beat. That's where they can beat, kind of win the matchup against the Rams. Is Keenan Allen in the slot versus Quinton Lake? I really like that matchup. Quinton Lake's giving up. He's giving up over 1.75 yards per coverage route. So basically, anytime on average that he's covering you, you're getting 1.7 yards. Right. So if he's covering you, which is a decent amount, by the way, he's covering you, let's just say it's 40 routes in the game, you're probably going to get at least 70 yards or more on average. So, I like that matchup for Keenan Allen. Now he has to play, and maybe you're a little bit skeptical if he doesn't get full practices in, then maybe I don't mind benching him. But if he's full practice and ready to go, I think Keenan Allen could be really good this week. And honestly, we have 1 game sample size with Keenan Allen and Caleb Williams, but he had like 11 targets in that game. Only caught 4 passes, but he had like 11 targets. So we saw what Cole Kmet did. Maybe that switches a little bit over to Keenan Allen. Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin here. Again, I keep referencing this Commanders Cardinals game. I think it could be a bonanza of bad defenses. Terry McLaurin, hopefully what he did last week is what we're going to see more of with Jaden Daniels. I like his matchups against Sean Murphy-Bunting and Starling Thomas. I think he's going to go up against those two kind of equally throughout the game, and I think he could win. And he's kind of the main guy for Jaden Daniels, and he should be because he's really damn good. So I would be starting Terry McLaurin if possible. Jaden Reed is another one here. I want to start Jaden Reed if Jordan Love is playing. That's my caveat. If Jordan Love is playing, I'm going to probably start Jaden Reed, not just because of what they did week 1, and that's the only sample size we have this year, but because I do like this matchup. I do like this matchup for Jaden Reed. I know it's the Vikings, but I think if they're going to beat the Vikings, this is how they're going to have to beat them, is to target Byron Murphy Jr., who I don't think is really playing that well to start the season. I know he was a second-round pick a few years ago, but I just don't know. I don't really think he's been playing that well to start the year. So I would be targeting this. And again, I think the matchups in the other parts of Minnesota's defense is really difficult. And so I think if they are going to win, they're going to need Jaden Reed to have a big game. So if Jordan Love's playing, I don't mind starting Jaden Reed here. And then George Pickens is another one. He's been very, very disappointing to start the year. He had a good week 1, and we were expecting big things from George Pickens. He's wide receiver 49 on the year. Maybe that's a little bit more of a product of the offense than anything. If George Pickens is going to have a big game here, it's going to be this week. Going up against the Colts. Jalen Jones, Samuel Womack III. I think that's how he's going to see the most. If they're going to have any success throwing the ball, which they'll have success. I think they'll have success moving the ball because they're going to be able to run the ball. That could open up things for George Pickens, play action, hit him deep, touchdown opportunities. If George Pickens is going to have a good game, I think this is going to be the game for him. I really hope it is. I really, really hope it is. So, you just look at the Colts the last couple of weeks. DJ Moore had a decent game against them. Roman Dunze had a good game against the Colts. I believe Nico Collins had a big game against the Colts as well week 1. So I think George Pickens can take advantage of their starting quarterbacks here. And then one more good one. This is a little bit of a deeper one, deeper leagues or DFS. I think Wan'Dale Robinson tonight going up against Jordan Lewis could have a pretty good game. And by pretty good, I mean he could be top 30, right? Like he finished as a wide receiver 3 this week. He's going to be limited because he's not out there in 2 wide receiver sets, only on 3 wide receiver sets. But that being said, I think Wan'Dale Robinson going up against Jordan Lewis could be a decent matchup here. Maybe they really hone in on making sure Malik Neighbors does not beat them. And that can open up things for Wan'Dale Robinson this year or this week, who, by the way, Wan'Dale Robinson is a top 36 wide receiver. So if you play in any 3 wide receiver flex leagues, he's technically a starter. He hasn't had big games, but he hasn't had bust games. He had 11.8, 9.8, 13.1. So if you're wanting 10 to 12 points, Wan'Dale Robinson could be the place to look. Jameson Williams going up against Tariq Woolen and Devon Witherspoon, the stud cornerbacks for the Seattle Seahawks. Don't love this matchup for Jameson Williams, who had a bad week in week 3. So people are already going to be a little bit scared because there's a chance that you haven't even capitalized on Jameson Williams's production, right? He's one of those players. Rashid Shaheed's another one of those. They have a good week 1. No one was starting. Most people weren't starting Jameson Williams. No one was starting Rashid Shaheed week 1. And then week 2, maybe it's like, well, I just want to see it one more time before I start him. You see another good game from him, and then you start him week 3, and then they bust, right? There's a chance that all that Jameson Williams has done is hurt you, right? So I don't love this matchup with him. If I could bench him this week, I think I will. Now he is one of those receivers. All he needs is one big play. I get it. All he needs is one big play. But I just don't love this matchup going against those two really, really good cornerbacks and good defenses, in my opinion. We haven't really seen any wide receiver go off for teams facing the Seahawks. For the Broncos, it was Josh Reynolds was their leading receiver week 1, 5 for 45. Against the Patriots, their leading receiver for the Patriots that week was Hunter Henry, but it was a tight end. And then the Dolphins without Tua. So they haven't really faced tough matchups in terms of receivers, but we haven't seen it yet. So I think this could be an Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta game if he's out there, Jahmyr Gibbs, rather than a Jameson Williams game. So I kind of want to fade him if I can. Darnell Mooney. This is someone who we're going to, potentially start thinking about starting, right? Like if you kind of just throw week 1 out the window for Darnell Mooney, because it was Kirk Cousins coming off the Achilles, they didn't play preseason together. If you throw that out, you look at Darnell Mooney and you're saying, wow, he's been wide receiver 17 the last 2 weeks, 16.3 and 10.6 half PPR points. Don't love this matchup for him. And I think this could be a situation of like a Rashid Shaheed, Jameson Williams, where you've seen 2 good weeks of Darnell Mooney production. You probably didn't start him those 2 weeks. You're going to start him week 4, and you potentially could get a bad game. You could have a good game, but you could have a bad game too. Marshawn Lattimore going up against Darnell Mooney. Generally don't like that matchup there. Couple more bad matchups here. Brian Thomas Jr. mentioned it last week. He was on one of our bad matchup going up against the Bills last week, and that was a hit. Now you have him going up here against this is Calvin Ridley, right? This is not Brian Thomas Jr. I got confused with the Jags helmet. I put Calvin Ridley in a Jags uniform. I shouldn't have done that. This is Calvin Ridley. Brian Thomas is next, though. Spoiler alert. Calvin Ridley, I don't like this matchup against Kyle Fuller and Jalen Ramsey. Going up against the Dolphins. I think this could be more of a Tony Pollard type of game, maybe a DeAndre Hopkins game, maybe get the tight ends involved, run game, Tajay Spears. Don't love it. I know it's tough to bench Ridley because you see the boom potential, 22.7, but any shallower leagues, I think I'm going to be sitting Ridley. I think he doesn't have a great matchup here. Brian Thomas Jr., just talked about him. Don't love this matchup. And I forgot to change the names. I just completely whiffed on Brian Thomas this week. But let me get you the matchups here for Mr. Brian Thomas Jr. It's not good. It's not great matchups for him. He's going up against Jalen Petrie. I like Houston and their cornerbacks, right? And potentially Stingley as well. Petrie and Stingley are 2 really good corners, in my opinion. So I don't really love those matchups. They could put I don't hate the Petrie matchup, but they could be putting Stingley more on Brian Thomas if they consider Brian Thomas their best wide receiver and their best weapon. Again, this could be another Christian Kirk week, Evan Ingram if he's playing, or Brenton Strange. So I kind of want to fade Brian Thomas this week, who I think is a little bit easier to fade because he's kind of been at best a low-end wide receiver 2, high-end wide receiver 3. It's not like he's been a must start. And then to finish up with the tight ends, here we have Mike Gesicki. I like Mike Gesicki going up against Josie Jewell. He's ranked consensus tight end 12 this week. Mike Gesicki's been pretty good to start the year. I like Mike Gesicki and his starts, especially for tight ends. He's tight end 7 because he had a 12-point game. Do think he has a good matchup here, though, with the Bengals going up against the Panthers. I think Josie Jewell could have a good game. Cole Kmet had a huge game in week 3. I think he could have another huge game going up against the Rams and Christian Roseboom, their linebacker, I believe. Consensus ranking 10 and 10. If Keenan Allen's out, especially, I really like Cole Kmet. I think it's a kind of a smash start, in my opinion. I think Caleb Williams needs that over middle of the field, short area target kind of guy. Like I don't need the big play. Let me chuck it down to you. Give me 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 yards at a time. So if it's third down and medium or long, they're going to go to Cole Kmet. So, and I think he can win that matchup going up against the Rams. Isaiah Likely as well, and Mark Andrews going up against the Buffalo Bills. We've been talking about the Buffalo Bills and how you need to target them when your players are going up against them. Is you need to target the guys that are the short area target guys, the middle of the field, because Buffalo just says you can have all that, and we'll bank on you making a mistake. We'll bank on you having a holding call or dropping a pass rather than beating us deep. We're not going to let you beat us deep, which is why I liked Christian Kirk last week, and Christian Kirk hit. Right, he was a hit last week because they left the middle of the field open, and Christian Kirk had his best game, 8 for 79. And Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis did not have good games. Same thing here. Don't love the matchup for the other players on the Ravens. Maybe Zay Flowers can kind of be that short area guy, but the tight ends here, specifically Isaiah Likely, going up against Balin Spector, I think he could win. And this is how they're going to beat Buffalo, is going to be attacking the middle of the field. And I think this could be in a likely game after 2 very disappointing games. And to finish up, guys, looking at 3 bad matchups for tight ends, we have Pat Freiermuth going up against EJ Speed, of course, against the Colts. I just think the Steelers are going to beat the Colts with Najee and George Pickens if they're going to beat them. I don't think it's going to be with targeting Pat Freiermuth against EJ Speed. So don't love the matchup for Pat Freiermuth, who somehow has been like a top 15 tight end, considering he just where's Pat Freiermuth actually? He's tight end 13. He hasn't had more than 6 half PPR points. That's disgusting. Jonnu Smith is another bad matchup, in my opinion, Jonnu Smith is, he had a good week. It's probably a void completely, but going up against Ernest Jones at the Titans, potentially Skylar Thompson, Tim Boyle as your starters, like avoid Jonnu Smith if possible. And then Hunter Henry, who people might thinking about, he got you again. You saw the 15-point big game for Hunter Henry. You start him and he puts up 2. I don't like this matchup against Fred Warner. I don't think I need to explain much there. He's going up against maybe the best linebacker, probably the best linebacker in all of the NFL. In Fred Warner, I would be fading Hunter Henry. So there you have it, guys. That's my best and worst matchups for week 3. Again, like and subscribe. We put these out every single week of the fantasy football season. It's been a big hit. Hopefully it's been helping you. Again, especially those bad matchups. I would look a little bit more at the bad matchups because they've been hitting at a 70% rate. So appreciate you all. Catch you guys in the next video.